Jack the Cunning Thief, an old Irish tale.
There was a poor farmer who had 3 sons, and on the very same day, each of the 3 boys went to seek their fortune. The eldest 2 were sensible, industrious young men. The youngest never did much at home that was any use. He loved to be setting snares for rabbits and tracing hares in the snow, and inventing all sorts of funny tricks to annoy people at first and then set them laughing.
The 3 parted at a crossroads, and Jack took the lonesomest. The day turned out rainy, and he was wet and weary. You may depend, at nightfall, when he came to a lonesome house a little off the road.
"What do you want?" asked a blurry-eyed old woman that was sitting at the fire.
"My supper and a bed, to be sure."
"You can get that here,"
Old woman responded.
"What's to hinder me?"
Jack asked of the man.
"The owner of the house are the 6 robbers who are usually out till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. If they find you here, they skin you alive at the very least," the old woman warned.
"Well, I think,"
Said Jack.
"that their very most couldn't be much worse. Come give me something out of the cupboard, for here I'll stay. Skinning is not much worse than catching your death of cold in a ditch or under a tree on such a night as this.
The old woman was afraid and gave him a good supper, and when he was going to bed, he said if she let any of the 6 honest men disturb him when they came home, she'd be sorry for it. When he awoke in the morning, there were 6 ugly-looking men standing round his bed. He leaned on his elbow and looked at them with great contempt.
"Who are you?"
asked the headman gruffly.
What's your business?
"My name
Says Jack.
is Master Thief, and my business just now is to find apprentices and workmen. If I find you any good, I'll give you a few lessons."
The men were a little cowed, but the headman says,
"Well, get up, and after breakfast we'll see who is to be the master and who will be the journeyman."
They were just done breakfast, when what should they see but a farmer driving a fine large goat to market.
"Will any of you undertake to steal that goat from the owner before he gets out of the wood, and without the smallest violence?"
Jack asked of the man.
"Oh, I couldn't."
Says one of the men.
"And I couldn't."
Says another.
"I'm your master,
Says Jack.
and I'll do it."
He slipped out and went through the trees where there was a bend in the road, and laid down his right brogue in the very middle of it. Then he ran onto another bend and laid down his left brogue and went and hid himself.
When the farmer sees the first brogue, he says to himself,
"That would be worth something if it had the fellow, but it is worth nothing by itself."
He goes on till he comes to the second brogue.
"What a fool I was!
Says the farmer.
Not to pick up the other. I'll go back for it."
So he tied the goat to a sapling in the hedge and returned for the brogue. But Jack, who was hiding behind a tree, had it already on his foot. And when the man was beyond the bend, he picked up the other and loosened the goat, and led him off through the wood.
Of course, the poor man didn't find the first brogue, and when he came back, he didn't find the second either, and his goat was gone.
"What will I do after promising Johanna to buy her a shawl? I must only go and drive another beast to the market unknownst. I'd never hear the last of it if Joanne found out what a fool I made of myself.
The men were in great admiration at Jack, and they wanted him to tell how he had tricked the farmer and gotten the goat, but he wouldn't tell them.
By and by, they see the poor man driving a fine fat wether the same way.
We'll steal that wether before it's out of the wood, and no roughness used.
Jack challenges the men.
I couldn't.
I couldn't do it.
I'll try.
Says Jack.
Give me a good rope.
The poor farmer was jogging along thinking of his misfortune when he sees a man hanging from the bough of a tree.
That corpse wasn't there an hour ago. Am I in my right senses?
There was another turn in the road, about the same distance beyond, and just past it a third corpse was hanging.
Oh, murder! I'm beside myself. What would bring three hung men so near one another? I must be mad. I'll go back and see if the others are there still.
He tied the wether to a sapling and back he went. But when he was round the bend, down came the corpse and loosened the wether and drove it home through the wood to the house of the 6 men. Imagine how the poor farmer felt when he could find no one dead or alive going or coming, nor his wether, nor the rope that fastened him.
Oh, misfortunate day!
Cried he.
What'll Joanne say to me now? My mourning gone, and the goat and wether lost. I must sell something to make the price of the show. Well, the fat bullock is in the nearest field. She won't see me taking it.
Well, the robbers were greatly surprised when Jack came back with the wether.
If you do another trick like this, I resign my command to you.
Soon saw the farmer going by again, this time driving a fat bullock.
Who'll bring the fat bullock here and use no violence?
Oh, I couldn't. And I couldn't.
I'll try.
Says Jack, and away he went into the wood.
The farmer was about at the spot where he saw the first brook, when he heard the bleating of a goat off to his right on the wood.
He cocked his ears, and the next thing he heard was the baying of a sheep.
Gracious!
Says the old farmer.
Maybe that is my own that I lost.
There was more bleating and more baying.
Says B, and he tied his bullock to a sapling that grew in the hedge, and away he went into the wood. When got near the place where the cries came from, he heard them a little further on his tail, and on he followed them. At last, when he was about half-mile from the spot where he tied the beast, the cries stopped altogether.
After searching and searching, till he was tired, he returned for his bullock. But there wasn't a ghost of bullock there, nor anywhere else that he searched.
This time, when the thieves saw Jack and his prize coming home, they couldn't help shouting out.
One morning, when they were at breakfast, about a week later, the headman said to Jack,
Will you mind the house for us today while we are at the fair of Mochery? We haven't a spree for ever so long, and you must get your turn whenever you like.
After they were gone, says Jack to the wicked housekeeper.
Never say it twice.
Says Jack, and off they went.
After they were gone, says Jack to the wicked housekeeper.
Do these fellows ever make you a present?
Never.
Exclaimed the old woman.
Well, come along with me and I'll make you a rich woman.
Her to the treasure cave. And while she was in raptures, gazing at the heaps of gold and silver, Jack filled his pockets as full as they could hold, put more into a little bag, and walked out, locking the door on the old hag and leaving the key in the lock. He then put on a rich suit of clothes, took the coat and the wether and the bullock, and drove them before the farmer's house.
Anne and her husband were at the door, and when they saw the animals, they clapped their hands and laughed for joy.
Do you know who owned them beasts, neighbors?
Asked Jack of the farmer and his wife.
I believe they are surely ours.
Found them straying in the wood. Is that bag with 10 guineas in its hung around the goat's neck yours?
Faith, it isn't.
Well, you may as well keep it, it's a godsend. I don't want it.
Jack traveled until he came to his father's house in the dusk of the evening. He went in and asked,
Could I have a night's lodging here?
Not recognizing Jack as his son, his father said politely,
Oh sir, our place isn't fit for the likes of a gentleman such as you.
Oh, father, don't you know your own son?
Jack said, and they looked at him more carefully and at last recognizing him. It was only a strife to see who'd have him in their arms first. His father asked,
Jack, where did you get those fine clothes?
Oh, you may as well ask me where I got all the money,
said he, emptying his pockets on the table. Well, they got in a great fright, but when he told them his adventures, they were easier in mind, and all went to bed in great content. Then, the next morning, he asked of his father,
Father, go over the landlord and tell him I wish to be married to his daughter.
Faith, I'm afraid it only sent the dogs at me. If he asks me how you need your money, what will I say?
His father replied, and Jack gave him this answer.
Tell him I'm a master thief, and there is no one equal to me in the 3 kingdoms, that I'm worth 1,000 pounds, and all taken from the biggest rags unhanged. Speak to him when the young lady is nearby.
Droll message you're sending me on. I'm afraid it won't end well.
his father said, but he went to speak to the neighbor as Jack had requested. The old man came back in 2 hours.
Well, what's news?
Jack asked.
Droll's news, enough. The lady did seem a bit unwilling. I suppose it is not the first time you've spoken to her. And the squire also laughed and said you would have to steal the goose off the spit of him in his kitchen next Sunday, and he would see about it.
Oh, that won't be hard anyway.
Next Sunday, after the people came from early mass, the squire and all his people were in the kitchen, and the goose turning before the fire. The kitchen door opened, and Jack, disguised as a miserable old beggar man with a big wallet on his back, put in his head and asked the squire,
Would the mistress have anything for me when the dinner is over, your honor?
To be sure, we have no room here for you just now. Sit in the porch for a while.
The squire said to the beggar, who quickly replied,
God bless your honor's family and yourself.
Soon, someone that was sitting near the window cried out,
Oh, sir, there's a big hare scampering like the devil around the lawn. Will we run out and pin him?
Pin a hare indeed. Much chance you have. Sit where you are.
the squire. That hare made his escape into the garden, but Jack that was in the beggar's clothes soon let another out of the bag.
Oh, master, there he is, still pegging round. He can make you escape. Let us have a chase. The hall door is locked in the inside, and Mr. Jack can get in.
Said another. Another, and the squire responded a bit piqued.
Stay quiet, I tell you.
In a few minutes, a shout came again that the hare was there still, but it was the third that Jack had given its liberty. Well, by the laws, they couldn't be kept in any longer. Out begged every mother's son of them, and the squire after them.
Will I turn the spit, your honor, while they're catching the hare?
Says Jack, still in disguise as a beggar. The squire says to him,
Do and don't let anyone in for your life.
Faith, and I won't. You may depend on it.
The third hare got away after the others, and when they all came back from the hunt, there was neither the beggar nor the goose in the kitchen. Smiling to himself, the squire says out loud, realizing what has happened.
Lucky to you, Jack. You beat me this time.
Well, while they were thinking of making up another dinner, a messenger came from Jack's father to beg that the squire and the mistress and the young lady would step across the fields and take share of what luck had sent them.
There was no dirty mean pride about the family, and they walked over and got a dinner with roast turkey and roast beef and their own roast goose. And the squire had like to burst his waistcoat with laughing at the trick. And Jack's good clothes and good manners did not take away any liking the young lady had for him already.
while they were taking their punch at the old oak table in the nice clean little parlor with the sanded floor, says the squire,
You can't be sure of my daughter, Jack, unless you steal away my 6 horses from under the 6 men that will be watching them tomorrow night in the stable.
I'll do more than that, for a pleasant look from the young lady.
And the young lady's cheeks turned as red as fire as she blushed. Monday night, the 6 horses were in their stalls, and man on every horse, and a good glass of drink under every man's waistcoat. And the door was left wide open for Jack. They were merry enough for a long time, and choked and sung, and were pitying the poor fellow. But the small hours kept on, and the whiskey lost its power, and they began to shiver and wish it was morning. A miserable old woman with half a dozen bags round her and beard half an inch long on her chin came to the door.
Then 10-hearted Christians.
Says she, who was really Jack in yet another disguise.
Would you let me in and allow me a piece of straw in the corner? The life will be froze of me if you don't give me shelter.
well, they didn't see any harm in that, and she made herself as snug as she could, and they soon saw her pull out a big black bottle and take a sip. She coughed and smacked her lips, and seemed a little more comfortable, and the men couldn't take their eyes off her.
My gosh! I'd offer you a drop of this, only you might think it too free making. In truth, It's myself that glads to show how I value your kindness in giving me shelter. I'm not without another bottle, and you may pass it round while myself finishes what the decent man left me.
Says Jack. Well, what they drank out of the other bottle only gives them a relish for more, and by that time the last man got to the bottom. The first man was dead asleep in the saddle, for the second bottle had a sleeping potion mixed with the whiskey. The beggar woman lifted each man down, and laid him in the manger, or under the manger, snug and comfortable, drew a stocking over every horse hoof, and led them away without any noise to one of Jack's father's outhouses.
Confound you, Jack, and confound the numbskulls that let you outwit them.
He went out to the stable, and didn't the poor fellows look very ashamed?
After all, it was no great thing to outwit such ninny hammers. I'll be riding out on the common from 1 to 3 today. And if you can outwit me of the beast I'll be riding, I'll say you deserve to be my son-in-law.
I'll do more than that, for the honor, if there was no love at all in the matter.
Yes, Jack, and the young lady held up her saucer before her face.
Well, the squire kept riding about till he was tired, and no sign of Jack. He was thinking of going home at last, when what should he see but one of his servants running from the house as if he was mad.
"Oh, master, master,"
says he, as far as he could be heard.
"fly home if you wish to see the poor mistress alive. I'm running for the sergeant. She fell down 2 flights of stairs, and her neck, or her hips, or both her arms are broke. And she's speechless, and it's a mercy if you find the breath in her. Fly as fast as the beast will carry you."
But hadn't you better take the horses? It's 1.5 miles to the surgeon's.
The squire asks of his servant.
"Oh, anything you like, master. Oh me, oh my."
He mourned woefully over and over.
Here, stop your noise and be off like wildfire. Oh, my darling, isn't this a trial?
Cries the squire. He tore home like a fury and wondered to see no steer outside. And when he flew into the hall and from that to the parlor, his wife and daughter that were sewing at the table screeched out at the rush he made and the wild look that was on his face.
Oh, my darling,
said he, when he could speak.
how's this? Are you hurt? Didn't you fall down the stairs? What happened at all? Tell me.
Why, nothing at all happened. Thanks God, you rode out. Where did you leave the horse?
Well, no one could describe the taste the squire was in for about a quarter of an hour, between joy for his wife and anger with Jack, and shame for being tricked. He saw the beast coming up the avenue, and a young man in the saddle with his feet in the stirrup leathers. The servant didn't make his appearance for a week, but what did he care with Jack's 10 golden guineas in his pocket?
Jack didn't show his nose till next morning, and it was a queer reception he met.
That was all foul play you gave.
But if you give my bride from me any longer, I'll steal her away. He was minded by fairy dragons.
When the squire and his wife were in bed, and the moon shining in through the window, the squire saw a head rising over the sill to have peeped, and then bobbing down again.
That's Jack,
says the squire to his wife.
I will astonish him a bit.
And with that, he pointed the gun at the lower window pane.
Oh Lord!
says the wife.
Sure, you wouldn't shoot the brave fellow?
Indeed, and I wouldn't for a kingdom. There's nothing but powder in it.
Up went the head, bang went the gun, down dropped the body, and a great thump was heard on the gravel walk.
Oh Lord!
cries the squire's frightened wife.
Poor Jack is killed or disabled for life.
I hope not,
says the squire, and down the stairs he ran. He never minded to shut the door, but opened the gate and ran into the garden. His wife heard his voice at the room, down before he could be under the window and back. As she thought,
Wife, wife!
Says the voice from the door, which was, of course, Jack, using his best imitation.
The sheet, the sheet! He is not killed, I hope, but he is bleeding like a pig. I must wipe it away as well as I can and get someone to carry him with me.
She pulled the sheet off the bed and threw it to him. Down, he ran like lightning, and he had hardly time to be in the garden. And when he was back, and this time he came back in his shirt as he went out.
High hanging to you, Jack,
says the squire loudly.
for being a such a rogue.
A rogue, you say?
says his wife.
I didn't much care if he was. What do you think was bobbing up and down at the window and thumped down so heavy on the walk? A man's clothes stuffed with straw and a couple of stones it was.
The squire huffed and puffed, and his wife then asked him,
And what did you want with the sheet just now? To wipe his blood if he was only a man of straw?
Shit, women. I wanted no shit.
Well, whether you wanted it or not, I threw it to you, and you're standing outside of the door.
Oh, Jack, Jack.
Moaned the squire, falling heavily to his bed.
No putting you off. We must do without the shit for one night. We'll have the marriage tomorrow to get ourselves out of trouble.
So married they were, Jack and the squire's daughter, and Jack turned out to be a real good husband. And the squire and his lady were never tired of praising their son-in-law, Jack the cunning thief.